just getting ready to go live on this hip wrapping. Just waiting for my friend Laura to join me so we can chat for the next hour or so about hip wrapping, why it's good, why what you can use, why it's good for pregnancy, why it's good for birth, why it's good for all sorts of part of a woman's life to be able to wrap your hips. And I'm just with 5 minutes ahead, so I'm just waiting for Laura to join me. I've got a whole bunch of implements to show you, and you're very welcome to ask any questions, and I'll do a proper introduction when Laura's joined me. There she is. Hello.
Hello.
So we're not officially starting until like 8 o'clock, but I think we can wait a couple of minutes. You all right?
Yeah, I'm all right. Just trying to get my phone to stand in the exact place where I want it to stand. And I have something on my eye. But yeah, I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good, yeah. Somebody said, hello, dear Sophie. Hello.
Nice. There.
So yeah, we're just having like I think I need to put myself a bit higher now. There's two of us on the screen. So that people can actually see my face as opposed to, yeah, still a bit higher.
I know. I'm struggling with the same.
Yeah. All right. That's better.
Yeah, that works. Yeah. Your hair is super long.
I know. Look.
When did it get so long?
You haven't seen it for a while, have you? How long is yours? Where does yours go? I think yours is...
No, I cut mine after birth, because you know what happens to hair after birth. It goes like...
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, I cut it. Otherwise, yeah, it was almost like down to my waist, but yeah, it's now a bit shorter. Wait, I'm gonna, while you're waiting, I'm just gonna set up my phone so it doesn't show the screen.
So if you just joined us, in a minute we'll do a proper introduction, and I can let Laura introduce herself as well. Okay, that's better. Right, is it 8 o'clock? Can we start?
Yes, let's do it.
All right, so good evening, everyone. We're officially starting this live about hip wrapping. And I'm Sophie Messager. I'm a doula, a healer, and what else am I? I'm a doula, a healer, and the author. I'm based in Cambridge, UK. I'm the author of a book called Why Postnatal Recovery Matters, which is all about trying to reclaim some wisdom around the postpartum. And part of what we're going to talk about today is that, you know, the importance of why wrapping your hips is useful in the postpartum, but not only. We're going to spend about an hour live, and we're going to talk about why wrapping your hips is so good physically and emotionally and spiritually. And then we'll spend about the first half of talking about that. So we'll talk about that in the context of just being a woman. We'll talk about that in the context of birth and postpartum pregnancy. And then we'll spend the next half an hour or so showing you stuff that you can use to wrap your hips. So I'm very excited to have my friend Laura here today. So Laura, I'm going to let her introduce herself in a minute, but she's a dear friend of mine. She's from Colombia, and she's a very wise woman. So I'm excited that we're going to be talking about sharing our wisdom and talking about hip wrapping together. So Laura, would you like to tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah. Thank you, Sophie. Thank you for having me. I think you're so very wise too. Yeah, so I was listening to you and I was like, yeah, I am also a doula, I'm also a healer. I also work a lot on postpartum recovery. It's one of like my preferred things to work on when I'm doing massage, when I'm doing well, therapeutic work, etc. So I'm a massage therapist. I'm a holistic voice therapist. And I love talking about stuff like this. I love talking in general, but yeah, I love talking about women's health. So I'm very excited. And I'm a total believer in pelvic wrapping. So I'm really excited to be here to talk about it.
But I thought it might be good to give a bit of background. So I'm going to say a very quick potted history of how I learned to wrap my hips, and I'll be interested to hear yours as well.
Cool.
So for me, I was introduced to the use of rebozo, mostly in the context of birth, about 2013. So that would be nearly 8 years ago now. And you know what, really, it was just presented in the context of like how you can use rebozo technique to support labor. There wasn't that much focus on the postpartum when I first did training. Then I got introduced to, the first course I went to was mostly birth oriented, and then I did learn to do closing the bones, which was all about the postpartum, and of course there was an element of wrapping then. And the more sort of general thing for me that became very clear that is needed outside of the birth field was because I started doing it for myself, but also because I started teaching the techniques. And when I taught the techniques, because you cannot learn these things by just talking about it, I made sure everybody got to wrap their own hips, and I got feel what it felt like. And then I saw that everyone was like, I don't want to take it off. Oh my God, it feels so good. You know, not just women who had, not just like in pregnancy when you had achy hips or a heavy belly, or not just in postpartum when you had, you know, very open pelvis and or still, you know, like things that were uncomfortable. But that I started using it during my periods. You know, it became a thing that the more I started using it, the more I started hearing what people said it did for them. The more I thought, wow, how did we lose that? And then it's not something we seem to have in the Western culture anymore. But the research I did for my book showed me that it used to be done in England, you know, used to be done in Europe. It used to be done like pretty much everywhere, that people think, oh yeah, there's some traditional really wise things only from South America. And I was like, wow, how did we lose it? You know, it's because in the research I did for my book, I found this old midwifery manual from the 19th century in the UK that written by a man, of course, you know, well, we'll probably get more into that during this, but traditional female wisdom wasn't written about, so it got lost really quickly. And I think the burning of witches probably didn't help. But I was really amazed when I found that, you know, it was part of the Western culture as well. And then when I started asking stories, I had a friend who told me that when she gave birth to twins in 1980s here in the UK, her grandmother told her she should wrap her belly. You know, and all these kind of stories. And I was like, wow, it's not that long ago. We still had that wisdom. So, you know, tell us what was your learning, how you started using it.
So, in Colombia as well, let's say that all this care around the womb during your period, it's also a thing that still grandmothers share. You know, so it's not that like long ago. So it's a bit not everybody follows, and some people just believe that it's like, you know, old ladies stuff. Obviously, but especially like in the rural areas is pretty strong, and obviously in the indigenous communities and so on. So you hear it all the time, like don't sit on cold floor, blah blah blah. But I had a long journey through, like, to heal my menstrual period, like my menstrual cycle, because I had loads of issues. So from very early on, I started looking into ways to make it better. And one of the things I learned was through my herbalist there, who follows like traditional medicine from the Amazon. So he taught me like the basic rules, let's say, to like keep a healthy womb. And one of them was about keeping it warm. So I kind of instinctively started wrapping with a scarf or whatever I had at hand, just to prevent getting a cold. And then later, when I started working as a doula and specifically learning the closing the bones, the cerrada and all that, I learned more about the fajas or the belts or the chumbes that are used to specifically hold the mother through her postpartum stages. Oh, and also during pregnancy, you know, to hold the baby up or down or wherever you want to hold it, etc. So I then kind of, well, obviously you put two and two together and started researching, and evidently these belts, these traditional belts are, even though they're more popular in pregnancy and postpartum, traditionally women have them since they get their first period, and then it's the same one even that they use all their lives, you know, and then to carry the babies when they're older. So it's just the same item that just serves for all these purposes. So that's how I decided that I really needed to wear one all the time. So for my period, and as you said, when I started treating women, I also noticed that the effect of wrapping people up as you do when you're closing the bones was really beneficial in general, because it really soothes the mind. And so I started doing as well with men, with, you know, with everybody that I could like tie up. And then, so yeah, so I just started incorporating it more in my life as well as in my therapy.
Yeah, the period stuff, it was my experience because of the knowledge I had for the postpartum. I started experimenting with that, and I felt on some energetic level. So we need to say that we both work with energy, so we're quite, you know, feeling with that. And I felt that bleeding during the period was almost like a mini postpartum. You know, I felt it was the same sense of needing to be like wrapped up and needing to be warm, and it just felt like I needed it more during that period. So maybe we should start talking about the warm stuff. Or we said we were going to talk about the warmth. We were going to talk about the sort of why holding the pelvis together was helpful, and we were going to talk about what else we said we were going to talk about. The sort of psychological, spiritual, emotional.
Yeah. Like the symbolic meaning of wrapping up. Yeah.
So the warm stuff, what I found really fascinating is I actually, completely separately from the rebozo and the doula work, I discovered a few years ago a Japanese sort of more like a boob tube for your waist. So I have one here, you know, that it's basically just a, you know, like a knitted boob tube, but for your waist. And the reason I discovered that, I don't even remember how, but I have like suffer from like cold fingers and toes during the winter. And the article I came across is this Japanese thing called a haramaki. It described that if you keep your core warm, then your fingers will be warmer and your toes will be warmer. And I started wearing a haramaki about 5 years ago in the winter. And didn't really make the link between that and the rebozo wrapping, you know, because for me they were two separate things. And now because I do swim in the river all year round, and I swim now when it's like 4 degrees, you know, I found that keeping my core warm afterwards goes a long way to warming back up. And I asked my mum, I was born in Brittany in France. And my mum said, well, yeah, when you were a child in Brittany, all the farmers who spend a lot of time outside, they knew that like keeping something around their kidneys to keep themselves warm, you know, keeping something wrapped around their waist and hips was a thing. And then I've seen since, you know, that there's something that people have told me is part of Chinese culture. My husband's from Hong Kong, but the friends of mine have said, yeah, I've seen stuff like that in Chinese, in China, and I've seen stuff like that in Tibet, and you know, and I think again that is very, very much worldwide. So on a sort of, you know, simple, the idea of the warmth beyond any kind of health thing, it helps blood flow. It helps, you know, to keep yourself in a healthy place. As everybody knows, it's funny because we haven't lost that wisdom that when you're sick, you don't want to get cold. So last week, I was really fascinated to go swimming in a river with a woman who is recovering from having being very sick with COVID. She said she nearly died. She was in hospital for ages. And she said, I wear that thing all the time. She had the exact same one. which I thought this is really fascinating. You know, the synchronicity when you start doing things like that. So tell us, Laura, what your take is on the why is keeping the pelvis and the abdomen warm? Because we're talking about hip wrapping, but really it's about wrapping the hip, is about wrapping the belly, but you know,
yeah,
yeah,
it's about wrapping the organs.
yeah.
So yeah, so I went through this like journey of womb healing that I went through. I learned that in traditional medicine in Colombia, and same as in Chinese medicine and in Ayurveda and stuff, all these systems have that thing in common, and is that temperature of the different organs is very important. So it has to keep a certain balance, and some organs need a specific temperature, etc. So the womb needs to be warm for it to do its thing. You know that when we ovulate and when we get pregnant, the temperature rises.
Yeah.
Because well, it needs to keep the egg, etc. Well, I'm not gonna get into that, but the temperature changes in the womb according to where in the cycle it is. So when we're menstruating, it's open, so it becomes vulnerable to the cold. So in Colombia, they say you got a cold in, like the cold came in
Inside your body.
inside your body, and now
Yeah.
it's there, and it's not leaving because you like took it during your period,
Yeah.
and then the womb closed and the cold stayed there. And so many things can make the womb cold, but especially things that we do during our period, and then the womb starts taking that heat from the rest of the body, and that's why you get cold feet and hands.
Yeah.
So I used to have like nails that were like purple almost.
Yeah.
I used to have a very low temperature, and my fingers were always freezing. And when I did all these things to warm up my womb and take the cold out, then my hands never got cold again, and I became like a normal person. So that's why the wrapping helps. And then other things like not eating certain stuff like citrus fruits and beer, and there's all these things that make the womb cold.
Yeah.
But that's why we have to be so like conscious and keep it wrapped and keep our feet warm.
Yeah.
And our head, because from all those places the cold gets in.
Yeah.
So that's what I learned. And then I saw it again. I kind of made the connection when I lived in India briefly many years ago. And when I was visiting the hospitals in the area and stuff, I saw the women that were postpartum wearing that like these knitted things for their ears.
Yeah.
And it's boiling in India, right?
Yeah,
But they're still obviously know that they're sensitive to the cold when they're postpartum, so they all wrap their ears so that the cold doesn't get in as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of stuff from many places kind of always goes back to the same idea.
The keeping the new mother warm is a big deal in pretty much every culture. You know, I mean, my husband's from Hong Kong, and when you take it traditionally, you're not even supposed to like wash your hair for a month.
Yeah, in Colombia, either. Like you cannot open the curtains, you cannot wash your hair or trim your nails or all that during the first 40 days. It's pretty strict if you wanna go like all the way.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, pretty. Yeah.
So we know that, you know, the sort of that knowledge of the postpartum is there, and we know that it's the warmth is there for the menstrual cycle. But personally, I think it can benefit anybody. You know, it's more than just a practice that is like just for the postpartum or just for your bleeding. And I think that I've come to think of it as a practice that would benefit anyone who has a pelvis. And what I encourage people to try, and we're going to, in the second half of this talk, you know, of this live, we're going to show you some stuff you can use to wrap your hips. But what I find is the proof is in the pudding, which is that if people try it, they can experience for themselves how good it feels. You know, they like, it's much more. So I guess if we want to start getting into the sort of physical stuff, it on a simple physical level, because your pelvis has some of the strongest muscles and ligaments around it to like keep it together. When you like kind of squeeze it together with a belt or a wrap, then all the muscles and ligaments around it can go, they can go. It's like when you've been on your feet all day walking and you sit down and you lift your feet off the ground, your feet go, oh, that feels good. So I think it's giving the pelvis a rest, this holding together. And then, of course, in situation where, you're a bit more vulnerable, like when you're menstruating or in the postpartum, or if you've got any pregnancy discomfort, the pelvic discomfort, the holding will help with a lot of symptoms. Now, what I feel is really important to say about that is, if you have pelvic pain in pregnancy or in the postpartum, you need to see a body worker who can like release your joints and make them functional again, because the wrapping is not going to fix the underlying cause of the problem. It's a very good symptom alleviating process. And that's really interesting, because when I started getting into that thing and doing, like a few years ago, I started doing a whole series of YouTube videos on pelvic wrapping for pelvic girdle pain and things like that. I originally shared one of the videos because a friend of mine who was a doula had really bad pelvic girdle pain, and she was due to see the osteopath. And she got called to a birth the day she was due to see the osteopath, which I think was like a Thursday. And then she missed her appointment because of being at the birth. And the birth went great and she was very happy. But then the next day she woke up and she couldn't get out of bed. So I made that video to show her how to like hold her pelvis together with a rebozo. And she said, oh, like, thanks to you, I could walk. She had to wait until the following week to see the osteopath again. But there are situations like that where I've also sent a rebozo to a woman who's bought a rebozo from me, and I sent her that video, and she was like sending me a picture back saying, this is the first time I can walk without crying in pain. I mean, in the lockdown, there were women for a few weeks, there were no osteopath or chiropractor or physio or anything like that. And the people, there is like the ideal, which you'd want to see people being able to be treated by a manual therapist who can help fix the underlying cause. But there is real life situation where either people might not be able to, or there's nobody in the area, or it's too expensive for them, all sorts of situation. And because it's so simple, I get very annoyed when I think about how easy it is, because you don't need any special tool. You're like, yes, everybody has a scarf in their home. You can use that, you can use like the belt from your dressing gown. You can use,
I had some pelvic pain at the end, and there was a bit during my pregnancy that I couldn't see the osteo either, so I was wrapping and it really helped. And so in my postpartum, and sometimes even now I do it because I still have a bit of symphysis pubis dysfunction, so which is being treated. But obviously sometimes if I use my core a lot or whatever in the day, it kind of gets a bit sore. So then the wrapping really soothes the pain.
Yeah. And then there's a sort of, the aspect that's more emotional and spiritual. So on an emotional level, my theory behind why hip wrapping is so comforting is because any kind of stuff that like brings you back in your body, like takes you out of stress, fight or flight versus rest and relaxation. And I also feel on some like really primal level, it's almost like, how babies are calmed down, like swaddled. And I believe that being wrapped, having your hips wrapped on some primal level, is sort of brings you back into the womb. So it'd be, and then of course there's the element of protection, like on some sort of energy level, having your pelvis like really tightly bound by something feels contained. Whether it feels contained on a physical level or on an emotional level or spiritual level, I don't really care. What I know is it feels good. So I would people to try it. Yeah,
it kind of works in all levels, because once you make the body feel contained, I think that it starts, that feeling starts like going into all your layers.
Yeah.
And it's exactly, that's the reason why I recently did 2 days ago, yesterday, I don't know. Time is weird these days. I did a little relaxation workshop for a group of friends and online, and that was exactly what I said, because I was telling them like it's important to, one thing that we can do is contain, and we
Yeah.
can contain like with our own arms or with a scarf or with a rebozo, and I was explaining how that makes us feel like we're in the womb, and that's very primal, so there's like no fighting with that, right? As soon as you're wrapped is the reason why we like to be
Yeah.
held. As soon as you're there, yeah, it's what you said, like
Yeah.
and at spiritual level, mental level, emotional level, everything just goes like and it's you cannot deny it, and that's why I started using it in like all my treatments, as you were saying, with everyone, with men as well, like because everybody likes that contention.
In my Reposo course, I teach people a wrapping, like just wrapping the top of the back, like the shoulders, and just holding the cloth. And I've used it twice when my husband's, when he was still going to work before COVID, like he came back and something had happened on his day at work that was like getting him like really annoyed. And he just ranted and ranted. And when people can't get out of the rant, and I just went and wrapped him, and he just went, and then the ranted stopped.
Absolutely.
When my children were smaller, my daughter used to come back from school, and something had happened, and she was upset. And I said, "You want some Reiki?" "No, I want some Remoso."
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? I use it more and more because it's just, you cannot stop it. Your mind cannot fight it. So it's great. You just connect at such a primal level that there's no much to say or anything. You just do it, and that feels, the body just like relaxes into that embrace, and then all your mind can just go wherever it needs to. So yeah.
In this particular time we're in, where it's difficult for people to access massage, and people are quite stressed, and there's a constant change of rules, and people feel like it's stuck in this kind of anxiety. I think it's more important than ever to help people do stuff like that for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the things I've started doing more and more, because obviously I'm not massaging at the moment, but I do have like bookings for little online courses, and people are quite interested in like learning. Well, you have to kind of DIY it, right? Because you cannot go anywhere these days. It's like, what can I do so teaching like couples to do little massage to each other, and teaching people to self-massage is so important, because we're just, we cannot cope. And then these tools, the rebozo, the chumbe, all those things, the contention they provide, the relaxation is just great for these times. And if we're alone, even more so, because we can't do it by ourselves, which is great.
Yeah. Which kind of nicely ties into starting to talk about some of the stuff you can use. So
yeah,
I try to be very much of the view that you use what works for you. So we're going to show you a bunch of things. It's a bit like choosing jeans, so it can be as simple as buying, like very tight leggings, or, those kind of big knickers that have like quite a bit of compression inside of them.
Yeah.
So these are nice, but they're not like you can't really adjust I think these are nice for the postpartum in terms of like holding your belly a bit more, but they're not going to do the sort of level of tightening that we want to get, because for it to work, the pelvis wrapping, for it to be effective and in the sort of containment and holding the joints and all the ligaments together, it needs to be, as you know, quite tight.
Yeah, quite tight.
So what works, one of the simplest thing that works, if that's what you're aiming for, because again, when we start getting into different ways of wrapping, it depends whether you're doing it for wombs. If you're doing it just for wombs, it doesn't matter if it's not tight, right? Because then any kind of, like you experimented with it yourself, any kind of scarf just loosely wrap around your abdomen, and hips will do the job. But if you want to experience that real feeling of containment, I think what works best is a nice strong cotton scarf, like a rebozo. So something like that, like if you have something like a pashmina would work. Yeah, but I think what I find is, I don't know if you can see the structure of this, but when it's cotton and it's not stretchy, then that's work. So I just want to very quickly show a very simple way, very quickly demonstrate a very simple way of. So what you can do is, here I've folded this rebozo in half and then in half again, because normally it's a lot wider. And what you want to do is find your hip bone. So mine is here, and then just wrap like just below the hip bones. And then what you want to do is cross the fabric at the back like this. And then once you crossed it, you can bring it back to the front, and you extend your arm to the side so you can just pull on the fabric, and then you bring it back to the front and you do a knot. And what that does is really, wrap basically this part of the pelvis. So you want to wrap below your hip bone and around your pubis symphysis. It's going to enclose the whole of the pelvis. And at the back, as you can see, there's those joints here called the sacroiliac joints. And those can really benefit from being held together. So what you want to do is a wrapping that will help hold all of the joints together. And that doesn't, how much tightening is completely based on what feels good to you. Yeah. We both know, Laura, that the pelvis can take a lot of tightening. But if you just pull with your hands like that and you do it at a level that feels comfortable, then usually it's great.
Yeah, here I want to mention that even though I've tried many things, obviously, in my life, like scarves of all sorts of materials, and so this is like a normal scarf, which I guess could work, but then the benefit of more like specific tools like the rebozo or the chumbe, etc., is that they're so much longer.
Yeah, I know.
Well, and the fabric, as you said, does not give, because obviously a lot of scarves and shawls have just like kind of that stretchy feel that then is never gonna give you that pressure. So that, just to compare, I do love these rebozo because like ultra mega long, but like that's a normal scarf, and then I got all that, right? So you can because it's easier to give the correct pressure all around. Because if not, you'll end up with a little tiny knot in the front that just kind of brings it all together.
Yeah. It's nice if you only have like a 2 meter long scarf. Again, the other aspect we need to consider is how big you are. Of course, if you're a tiny little woman, then you might be able to get away with actually double wrapping just a normal scarf. But I'd say you want something that's probably at least 2.5 meters long to be able to wrap, and most scarves aren't that long. But if you want to experience what that feels like, it's a really great way to start, just with a pashmina. Anything you've got in a wardrobe, even like a woolen scarf, anything, just practice wrapping. Because what I found really interesting is when you take it out, that's when you feel, oh my God, I want it back.
Yeah, definitely. No, anything you can get your hands on to start to just really experience the benefit, and then you start like us being like, oh, maybe I'll get one of these, maybe this one is better. Because then once you try it, then you can't stop getting stuff to try on.
Yeah, I know. And it's what I want to emphasize. It doesn't require great skill. People, because some type of postnatal binding are complex. And so it's easy for people to think, well, I can't bind my hips because it requires a knowledge I haven't got. But because it's as simple as just bringing a scarf together at the front and making a knot, and and where you place it is also depending on what feels good to you. So I showed below the hips because that's, just below the hip bone, because that's a very standard way of wrapping the pelvis. But it's if you have a really long scarf, you can wrap your belly and your hips, and that can feel great too.
Yeah. The longer, the better, just because it gives you more places to get in. So you can just like go around, you go up, go down, and that's one of the pleasures of experimenting with hip wrapping. Is that like how thick do I want this thing to be, so how much do I want it to cover in my body? Because I used to feel like, for example, with scarves, that if I wrap my hips, then my tummy would feel like vulnerable. So I kind of also wanted something to go around my belly button. Traditionally, you bind the belly button because that's where like the energy comes in and out. So it's important to have it, covered as well. So you need something like so like that thick, double, so that it covers your belly button and grabs your hip bones. Yeah.
At the moment I spend a lot of time outside, and I just often wear a haramaki, and I've discovered this it's called a belly blanket, by a lady that called Catherine, who runs a website called Cherishing Everything, and she made this. It's made out of fleece.
That looks
What's
nice.
really cool about it is it's got a little pocket that you can put a hot water bottle.
A hot water bottle. Clever.
and it's clever because there's a hole for the tie, so it doesn't overlap. Do you see what I mean? And so sometimes I wear the haramaki like under my clothes, and then I wear that around. This is not like designed to tighten; it's designed to keep you warm.
Yeah, I like that one. I might get one.
Yeah, I want another one already, because this is something that a local yoga teacher told me about. It's made in the UK, handmade in the UK.
Great.
By the way, I'll mention that again at the end, but if anybody wants details to some of the sort of type of wraps we're talking about, the chumbe we'll talk about in a minute. It's more difficult to get hold of, but the most of the wrap I'm going to show, I just wrote a blog, which you can find in my bio. If you follow the link in my bio, that's called something like why wrapping your hips is helpful, or something along those lines. And in there I put some links to that belly blanket, and to haramakis, and to another blog which is about postnatal wrapping, in which there's linked to other belts and things like that, because there's a whole plethora of tools. Yeah. So why don't you tell us about your chumbe?
So when I started thinking of getting pregnant, I had the chance to acquire this one, which I've said before in your page, and that they were distributed by Ramiro, who is a male midwife from Colombia that has been touring in the UK. So he sold me this one, and this one is great because, well, it's red. So let's say that the red color is important to be in tune again with the temperature thing. So that is kind of like an add-on, and it's cotton, and it's very how do you call this? Like, it doesn't have any give, It's firm.
Yeah.
This is made in a weave. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, woven. Yeah.
And it's very, very thick, and it's very long, and it also has very long ties. So this really gives you a lot of play. As when you get pregnant, as well as you grow bigger, this allows you to obviously keep it as tight as you want, regardless of how big you are. So I really enjoyed this. I started using it during my period. So it will I'll demonstrate a bit of like a couple wraps. So in my period, I was wearing it like this, so just standard, like just around.
Yeah.
So this is holding, here is my belly button, and then I'll also go around my hips. So just pull it a tiny bit lower. And then these two go like that. and all the way to the back, and then these ones too. So it's, and obviously you can tighten it up more or less.
Yeah.
But it gives you a really, really good hold. And then during my pregnancy, obviously I was, when I was getting really big, I was having a lot of pain around here.
Yeah.
Holding my belly like this, and then going up, and then going around like that.
Yeah.
So it was some sort of like thing like this.
Yeah.
And during my postpartum, I was wearing it mainly like in this direction, so this really low and pulling up.
Yeah.
Because what I was interested on then was on like helping the womb to descend slowly.
Yeah.
And keeping it lifted, because you know it can feel like everything kind of drops, and you feel very heavy.
Yeah.
And your vulva feels really heavy, and everything feels like you need some sort of like lifting. So I was keeping everything really nice and tight with that. So yeah, I like this because being so long and being so easy to tie because of the really long bits at the end, it gives you all that play. And you can also, if they like to say, when the babies are too high, then you can tie them up here. When they're too heavy and they're too low, you can tie them down there. And so it's pretty cool. Traditionally, chumbes, this is more called like a faja because it's really big.
Yeah.
So faja is girdle, yeah.
Yeah.
And chumbes are also very traditionally thin, you know, like, and that is enough to keep you protected. You know, it's about the weave, and the intentions that are woven in the material when they're made. So either the thin one or the thick one, I find them really comfortable.
Yeah.
But they do have one issue, and that's why I wanna try that one with fleece that you have, and it's that because they're firm and they're very strong and everything, they're not to wear like all the time, because obviously the knots and everything can get uncomfortable. For example, I would have loved that fleece one for sleeping when I was pregnant, because I wanted to keep really warm, but obviously all these knots are really thick.
Yeah.
It's
not comfy to sleep in. Yeah.
It's absolutely not comfy, and then the texture is lovely and everything, but it's annoying on the skin. So it's not like to wear under your clothes, you know. It's
it's a bit like shoes, isn't it? Like you wouldn't make an analogy to shoes. You wouldn't go climbing the mountain with the same shoes you go to a wedding. Exactly. So I think you want different wraps.
Exactly. So this is not about choosing one wrap. This is about telling you about all the wraps that you can get and why they're all amazing.
In fact, this is one of the things I want to add as well as important to bear in mind is, and I'm sure you'll confirm that, years ago, before I got into all this kind of reclaiming this traditional knowledge, I used to think, you know, using so women would come to my antenatal class and they'd ask me about what I thought of postnatal wrapping. And I used to think it was bad because my grandmother, she wore a corset all her life. Because she wore a corset, she had no muscles.
Yeah.
You know, corset, like it had made her muscle, well, it's not that she had no muscle, but it had made the belly muscle and the back muscle very weak because the bone did the job. And so I think it's really important to say to people, we can't be prescriptive and say you should wear it for that long, but to be mindful of not wearing 24/7, especially something very, very tight. And especially in postpartum, we're thinking maybe just a few weeks, you know, rather than months and months and months, and certainly never 24/7, because you want to it's a treatment, right? You want to let your body
just
do its job, you know, healthy.
Yeah.
It's nice as something to use from time to time.
Definitely, because it is a treatment more than it's not just a piece of clothing that you would wear all the time. That's the reason why, like if you want to, like when you have a treatment of any sort, say you have a massage, you then need to stop having the massage so that the body can, you know, you can't be massaged forever and ever. So this is the same, like you to feel the effects and for the body to adjust and receive what the binding is giving. You obviously have to take some breaks. So yeah, definitely not 24/7, and you'll feel it. And I mean, it's to be in tune with the body as well. Like, should I take it off? Should I leave it a bit longer? So it's all about learning to listen to the body, but definitely, yeah, definitely give it a break so that your body can adjust, because then, if not, the effects on the body is the same as the corset. You know, it will create a deficiency, let's say, because it's something that is not part of us.
So it's always about balance, isn't it, these things? So I want to show some of the other belts I have, because some people might not like the idea of wrapping, or they might find it easier to. So for instance, this belt here called the Seola belt. I put a link to it in my blog. It's basically just for the pelvis. You see, it's not, this is the size of my hand. This is not a wide belt. But what it's got is attached with Velcro. And it's got this clever double Velcro thing. So it's got a Velcro at the front to attach the belt, right, like this. And then it's got Velcros on the side, 2 of them. So you can tighten by just pulling. But I mean, it's, and I've got another one that sort of is similar in terms of, I've got, you know, there are brands that are like, you know, made of sort of, there are quite a few brands that are made of sort of more like medical type fabric. But if you want to just do your hips with just your pelvis, there are thin ones like this. There's a couple of brands I recommend in my blog, and there are some that are bigger, so they can again incorporate the pelvis and the belly. And then there's this, which I think is really cool. So this is called the Amina wrap by a brand called Unina, which is Australian. And it's basically designed to cover from your hips to your ribs.
Excellent.
So it's what the lady who created this thought, you know, about is creating something. It's attached with Velcro, which is very easy to use. And also what she explains is you can then tighten a different level of tightening, depending on, you want obviously tighter on your hip than you want tight on your ribs. But she explains that she wanted to recreate the ease of the Bengkang Indonesian wrap, but with just Velcro. And the advantage of having something that covers from the top to the bottom, especially in the postpartum, because this is designed to be used as a postpartum wrap. You don't want something that causes pressure to go down on your pelvic floor. So you don't want like something really tight on your belly, and then that's not supporting your hips, because then you're going to achieve the opposite of what you're looking for.
Totally, that looks really clever, to be honest. That's one of the ones of all the ones you like featured.
Sorry, I just want to say somebody's made a comment, a lady called Erica, who said, Sophie, can you please message me with the name of the wrap made in Australia? So it's called, the brand is called Unina, UNINA, and the wrap is called Amina wrap. And if you follow my bio, you'll find link to my blog, and in the blog that I've just linked to, the latest blog that's on my website, just called about hip wrapping, there's a link to the postpartum wrapping blogs that I've written last year, I think. And in there I put that wrap. I've added the link to that wrap because I think it's very unique. It's only produced in Australia, so if you buy it, it will take a while to come. At the moment, I just sent some proposals to somebody in Australia, and it took a couple of weeks, so it's not too bad. I thought it was going to take a lot longer than that. But yeah, there's nothing else out there. If you like the idea of being, you know, if you wanted to try and, with a scarf, if you wanted to bind your hips, you need a really big scarf, and you'd end up with like...
no, and it won't give you that kind of adjustable.
And I think we need to talk about... how you know, how practical it is, because I'm sure you've experienced when you've tightened your hips really bad, or sorry, not really, really strongly, not bad, but and then you need to go to the toilet. It's a faff to put it back on.
Yeah, yes, that's one of the things that had me really tired both when I was pregnant and in postpartum. Like I would do this very low, as I
Yeah,
said, because I had some symphysis pubis dysfunction. So I wanted it there, like holding everything to. But then every time I had to go to the toilet, the whole thing, and I had to like unwrap and then again.
yeah.
So this one looks really, really simple and
I
like
know, and the beauty
practical.
of it, because it's attached with basically a whole range of it's because it's attached around your belly with like basically lots and lots of velcro things that just wrap around each other from one side to the other.
Hmm.
Then you can just undo the 4 bottom ones,
Yeah.
and then you can put them back on, which I think is really unique in that
My,
respect, because everything I've got, even me, when like I've wrapped I'm not postpartum, and I just, when I wrap myself, because I feel the need and I go to the toilet, so fast.
I know, and you take so long trying to make it like just right, that is like
Oh,
right
I know.
pressure,
And it
right
feels
pace.
so good, that when it's done really, really well, it's,
Yeah.
I've not found yet something that's, I mean, the Velcro ones are probably the fastest.
Hmm.
Um, call me vain, but I like I don't think the Velcro ones are pretty, that what I found very attractive about this particular one. Um, we need to ask her if she can make a small one. What I found, the Velcro ones, they're usually like not, they're practical, they're functional, but
Hmm.
they're not
Pretty.
particularly lovely to look at. They're bland, I like bright fabrics. It makes me happy to have something colorful around my pelvis. Something, when you
Yeah.
see the difference between even something like that, that belly blanket I was showing earlier, it makes me happy to put that red thing around my
Yeah.
hips.
I ended up, when I was pregnant, that I was trying to get that one from Australia, the other one that you have.
Yeah.
I can't remember. But obviously we were in lockdown and so on, so
Yeah.
there was no way I could get it. So I did email them a few times, but well, it didn't happen. So because I also wanted something that was more comfy on my skin for when I was because this mainly I tie up on top of my skin, but I wanted something like for the night and stuff. So I ended up buying one of those like beige
Yeah, I
things
know,
that they sell
like
on
that,
the internet,
something like that. Yeah.
and it just made me feel so ugly and sad
And
and the
old.
first I
Yeah,
know.
something like your grandma would wear. Yeah.
Yes, like totally, totally like my grandma. So, and the first days of my postpartum, because I had to go back to the hospital because Jasper had jaundice, da da da. And so I didn't take this one because we kind of went in a hurry. So but I took that one because that one was already in my bag, and I swear that helped making me even more miserable and depressed that I was wearing that thing. It was like I felt so like, no, you are totally right. that
It's
makes part
interesting,
of
isn't it?
it makes part of the experience of holding you in a loving way.
Yeah, I know.
You have something nice, that you kind
Something
of.
cheerful, something that doesn't make you feel, because you're already wearing big pants and pads and everything. You don't want to, like, you want something that makes you feel good, yeah.
Totally, and also even during your period, right? Because you're like bloated, and you feel like really, I don't know, it's just not nice to have to wear something ugly on top of all the rest that is
There's a
happening.
market. We've just discovered something here, Laura. We need to make happy belts.
Happy
There
belts.
needs to be a market for making something that is designed to hold your pelvis for menstrual health, for comfort and stuff like that. But also like when you pick it up, it makes you feel good. Like when you just look at it, it makes you feel happy.
Yes, maybe this is how we'll be rich, Sophie.
I did try. I found some. Remember, I told you I found this really pretty Mexican belt.
Yeah.
But it's too short. It's like 30 inches. It's designed to be pretty around your waist when you wear a dress. It
Yeah.
doesn't do the job
No. No.
of like tightening your hips. Is not designed that way. So there's still room for creating,
Totally.
stuff that is practical, easy to use. Like the problem with anything with knots is that it takes a while to undo and redo. I mean, it's not the end of the world when it's a short belt, because I have a woven belt from Ecuador that is about that wide and is very stiff, like your chumbi, and I use that to wrap my hips. But it's not as easy as you'd want something that's got some kind of system that you can like the in like the Amina wrap, that you can just twist and tighten, and it doesn't. Also, the bulk of the knot, I don't know if you find that.
Which one?
The knots make a bulky thing, so if, it shows if you want to wear it discreetly under your clothes.
No, that's why I got that horrible beige one. It didn't work out because I just felt miserable. But yeah, when you tie all these, and because it has two, so I was walking with like a little thing there poking out all the time.
I know.
So it wasn't, it's not like it's easy to wear with all sorts of clothing, and you kind of have to be like, meh, I don't care. But if you want it to look nice, definitely you need something like more like Velcro, like different fabrics. So yeah, there's room for innovation. Anyway.
So I'm thinking we're probably gonna start wrapping this up now. I think we've covered everything we wanted to talk about. Just to recap what we've said, there is a lot of wisdom in using wraps and belts and things to support yourself, to support your pelvis, to support your belly, beyond the birth and pregnancy and postpartum time. It's I can imagine. I loved when you said that in Colombia traditionally the belts were given to girls when they had their first periods. It could be following your whole life. It becomes a special item as well. It becomes imbued with your own energy and that kind of stuff. So there is a lot of wisdom in using it outside of just the pregnancy and birth period. And I think this is even less well known than the postpartum one. Many people might have heard of the postpartum.
Yeah, I'm sure it's less known in those other moments, but so helpful anyway, and so it supports health in so many ways, I feel, and as we said, mental health as well. Just good. It feels good. Yeah.
So Daitini Doula is asking, is there a particular wrap you recommend for a woman after a cesarean? That's a really good question. So the Australian wrap called belly band, there is one that is basically, I haven't brought it with me, but it's kind of similar material to this, but it's softer, and it's designed to be worn post cesarean. So that's one that I know has been designed for that purpose. So that doesn't mean that it's perfect for everyone. They do it in black, thankfully, not just beige. But so that's something. They've got really cool videos on their website. The Belly Band. It's another Australian company, but they have a UK website, Belly Band UK, and that's designed especially to support the post-cesarean. Now, the caveat I want to give about that is my experience as a doula and baby wearing instructor before even being a doula is that there are new mums who love the pressure of a belt on their cesarean scar, and there are women who absolutely hate it. So you can't tell, and also it depends how well you're healing. I mean, the research that there is one piece of research that shows that binding post surgery. No, it wasn't a science study. It was a post abdominal surgery. It's shown to be helping healing faster and reduce pain. And so now I encourage people to try. I have this post cesarean. I have this white belt from the Belly Band, and I lend it to clients so they try and see if it works for them. And quite a few women said, they really liked it. I've lent it, I think, to 4 people last year.
Cool.
And so there is wisdom in trying that. And just to finish covering that topic, what really surprised me was when, I think 2 years ago, a woman came to my postnatal recovery massage course, and she said she had her first baby in Malaysia. Can't even remember exactly which country. I can't remember if it was Thailand or Malaysia now. Might have been Thailand. And she said they bound her. She had a baby by cesarean. They bound her in the hospital the next day. And when she had a baby again in Norway, couple of years later, they didn't get any binding, and she said she could feel the difference in a bad way. That the binding had really helped her heal. In fact, when she came to the massage, so this is a course I teach with Teddy, the osteopath, he gave her a treatment at lunchtime because the baby was 3 months old and she still looked very pregnant. And she said it hadn't been like that when she'd been bound after the birth of the first baby. So Daikini Doula says, thank you. Yes, it seems women need to be intuitive about it for sure. I imagine it could feel very comforting. And yes, I'm never going to say, oh, everybody should do it. People, that's one of the biggest questions I often get asked about, for instance, in the past about baby wearing is how often after cesarean. And I always say, well, some women like days and some women like
Definitely.
weeks, and
Definitely. Everything in this kind of medicine is so there's not a one size fits all, right? Like
no, definitely not.
It's always check in with the people, always, especially if you're a doula, like always check, suggest, always show, always offer the possibility to try these things because they're amazing. But yeah, you'll find people that love it, and you'll feel people that feel very reluctant to like wear anything tight or anything. So
yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
to wrap this up, I just want to say, we've offered you a buffet of wraps and hip binding here during this hour. If you want to find out more, so you can just follow the links in my bio. I have written a book called Why Postnatal Recovery Matters. In the book, there is a chapter on body work where I talk about postpartum hip wrapping and belly wrapping, just generally postpartum binding. Like I said earlier, I have a blog I just wrote last week about hip wrapping. So you can find that in my website by following the links in my bio. And from that blog, I link to another blog specifically about postpartum binding. And I also have an entire online course about the use of the rebozo on my website, which you can do in your own time, which I've designed to make sure it covers like various parts of life, and yourself for self-care, not just like the stuff you do to your clients, because doulas and therapists and people like us, we're usually really, really shit at self-care. So we need to like really important to give to ourselves as well. And I also have an online shop where I have a whole bunch of rebozos from both Mexico and Guatemala in various sizes and colors, and they're all pretty. No beige, no stripy beige rebozos in my shop.
Yeah, they're wonderful. Definitely not beige.
And if you want to get in touch with Laura, do you want to explain what the best way to join you?
Yeah, so at the moment, I'm going through some like changes in my social media world, but I'll be there for a while. You can contact me on this Insta, so White Owl Therapies, and this has a page on Facebook as well. And in my bio in Insta now, there's also like a link to a booking system where I'm doing all these like courses and stuff online, so you can check those out too.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining me, Laura. It's been lovely to chat to you. I feel at the beginning, I thought, how are we going to cover an hour? But actually, we could easily talk for another hour.
I told you we could do it.
Yeah.
I'm really glad you invited me, and I'm really glad we talked about this because this is such an important thing to put out there. So I'm really happy we did this. Thank you for inviting me to join you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.